Hey everyone, it is Wednesday. I'm back with a quick wealth tip Wednesday today. I might just go full conspiracy theory on you. I'll try not to, but um, it might end up sounding that way. That's your choice. My name is Colleen Tatum for you guys that don't know me. I'm from Northern Alberta today. We are blessed to have power and heat in this weather. Shout out to all my Texas peeps. Our thoughts are with you if you have enough power to even see this. I saw a tweet this week that got me just kind of really just thinking more and more about this rabbit hole that I go down sometimes about the system and the system that's created that isn't quite working for us. It's a hard thing because once you start peeling away the onion, once you start pulling at that thread, it starts to unravel a lot of things. As I've been sort of thinking about schooling, how we approach schooling in our society, how we approach making employees out of children, how we approach this notion that we're sold that you go to school, you work hard, you get a good job, that job and the government's going to take care of you in retirement. And the facts are, it doesn't add up. 95% of Canadians and Americans are basically financially devastated in retirement. Those numbers can be broken down into different categories of basically being dependent on the government to support you and also working much longer into retirement. We see more and more people that are entering retirement and they still have a mortgage, they still have credit card debt. Heck, a lot of them even have student loans still. So this system that we've been sold, if we start to break it down and we start to look at it and we start to unraveling it, how many of us is it actually working for? And so this tweet that I saw was talking about how banks are making record profits right now off of NSF fees. An NSF fee is basically when an automatic bill goes to be taken out of your bank account, the money isn't there, so the bank charges you an NSF. Well, I can see in the olden days, maybe that was a thing because they were manually doing this and the money was basically having to be manually moved around. But we've got computers now. There's no reason for this to be happening other than the banks are making money and profit off people that don't have any money. And we start to look at that system of what we've been taught and start to break it down a little bit. People are in poverty a lot of times and are really kept there because of this system. If you've ever been in a situation maybe where this has happened to you, where you've had NSF fees, that bill that needs to be paid, you need your car insurance to come out, you didn't have enough money, payday's on Friday, but now you got an NSF on top, and now you have to have even more money to pay that bill, but you need the bill paid because you need to drive your car. So you go get a payday loan, and then the payday loan charges you 19%, and then you're stuck in this cycle where you are really in a position where it is very, very hard to get out of poverty. Same thing, your power gets shut off. Well, what do? They charge you a reconnection fee. And a lot of times there's nothing even being reconnected. It's just a computer doing it. But it's another way that they can profit off people that are in a bad place. And right now we have record unemployment. We have not seen the unemployment levels that they are since the Great Depression. Things are great on the stock market, but in real life, a lot of people have been out of work for a really, really long time. So let's break it down a little bit. Where do these biases come from? Where do these systems come from? If we start to look at our colonial society, our society is built on this notion that poor people are that way because they're lazy, they're derelict, and they're even in some reduced mental capacity. If we look at the system that we were created on when the Industrial Revolution was happening, people that were poor were quite literally put in poor houses. What is a poor house? Well, basically, it's when you're poor and now the government would collect you and your children and place you in these facilities where you were separated from each other. So families were broken apart and you were forced into labor for factories, including the children. So this system was created on the notion that they had to protect these people by providing them basic shelter and food. And if we look into the history of these places, they were quite squalor, death and disease. They basically just worked you until you essentially died. But what perpetuated it was the factory owners. Well, weren't they making a lot of money off of all of this free labor that they were getting? So who was the people that were making the decisions, being talked to, being in the ear of? The factory owners. So the system was perpetuated. Now let's look at the banks. We've got deferrals happening. We know that record profits are being made from NSF charges. We had the banks come out and say, oh guys, we have your back in the pandemic. We're going to allow you to defer your mortgages. But what are they doing on the back end? They're taking that interest and they're piling it on top. And now they're going to make interest on top of interest. So they're actually going to make more money off you because you had to defer your mortgage because of a global emergency. But if we look again at who are the people in the ears of the decision makers, it might just be the banks. So I think it's time for us to kind of pick apart the system and some of these ideas that we've just been taught to buy into, that this is the way that things are, this is the way that our society works, because I believe there is more to life than dying and paying bills or growing up, dying and paying bills, right? But what happens is a lot of us are dead in our 20s and they just don't bury us until our 80s, do they? And this system is really just not working for us. So I want you to question. Are you happy in your life? Are you happy with what you're doing? Are you happy with the money that you've saved in the last 5 years? If you save that in the next 5 years, are you going to be okay with that? And if you're not okay with it, these are some things that you can do. So number one, it's really hard to do anything when you just don't have any money. So as hard as it is, I know that there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of side hustles right now. They're doing something, and I just commend them on trying to move forward. I commend them on trying to figure out a way, because money isn't everything, but it certainly helps make everything a lot easier. So that's number one, is try and find ways that you can be honest with yourself and find another income stream. As jobs are going through this transition, I don't believe that we're in a position to just think that that secure job we had is secure anymore. And even if it is what they're paying you enough? I've heard some people say, an employer often is paying you just enough to make sure you don't quit. So maybe it's time that you start looking at your options, start looking at what other plans and ways there are to make income for your family. And number two is to educate yourself. There's so many great resources out there. There are Instagram people, there are podcasts, there are books, of course, there are YouTube channels. Sometimes there's almost too much. So there's a few that I follow that are great. If you want that list, shoot me a message. Happy to share who I'm loving and who I'm learning some of this stuff from. But educate yourself so that you don't have to rely on someone else. For yourself. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. There are some key fundamentals in the money game that we all need to learn. We need to learn the system so we can flip the outcome. Do we not? And I very much suggest, if you are talking to a money person, they should not work for the bank. Because we've already discussed, what is the bank doing? The bank is making record profits off us staying where we are. So they're only probably going to give you just enough information to keep you, again, where you are. So talk to someone outside of the bank. Listen to some good podcasts, follow some people on Instagram, and start to educate yourself so you can make decisions for yourself. How can you tax shelter? How can you increase your wealth? How can you make sure that you're protected in these times? And then I guess just start to help people become aware, start to share the message, start to speak up, so that more and more those voices that the decision makers are hearing are hopefully the voice of us, and not necessarily just the banks and the people that profit off keeping us where we are. So that was my Wealth Wednesday for you folks. I don't know, maybe I freaked you out a little bit, but you know what? If I freak some people out, but it makes them start to make a change in their life, to take back the power, I'm okay with that. So you guys have a great day. I hope that you have a wonderful, wealthy Wednesday and hope to see you again next week.